Good afternoon, everyone, once again. For those who don't know me, my name is Lori Leshin, and probably today more than any other day, I'm very proud to say I'm the president of WPI. Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome our visitors to campus and everyone to today's celebration. WPI is truly proud to be the recipient of the 2016 Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. We're especially proud of the 4 faculty leaders who are being recognized today. It is indeed an extraordinary day, and we're so happy to receive this recognition from the National Academy of Engineering. I'd like to give a special welcome as we start off here today to our very special guests, including Bernie Gordon himself, who is here in the front row, and Dan Moat, who's the president of the National Academy of Engineering. You'll hear more about him in a minute. And a special thanks also to our friends from Raytheon for sponsoring today's festivities. Raytheon has been a great supporter of WPI for many years. It's one of our top employers, the employers of our graduates, and I'm very pleased that they're sharing the excitement of this day with us. I'd also like to say a special thanks to our trustees who are here, many of our trustees, including our board chairman, Phil Ryan. We also have several other special guests here, including Carlotta Arthur from the Luce Foundation, who has been a great supporter of WPI, and also Senator Harriet Chandler, who's the state Senate Majority Leader. We'll hear, I got it wrong there. From our state Senate, Senator Chandler is here, and you'll hear from her a little bit later. So today is really a wonderful opportunity to affirm all we've achieved to advance innovation in engineering education so far under the visionary WPI plan. But we are not a place that rests on past achievements, no matter how awesome they are. So I'm delighted that we're kicking off things today with a conversation about the future of engineering education. Conversations like this are becoming more important and more urgent every day as our nation continues to grapple with complex challenges that call on engineers for solutions. Challenges like the Flint water crisis, the large number of returning veterans needing smart prosthetics, cybersecurity lapses, and the need for sustainable sources of clean energy, just to name a few. The good news is that more and more young people want to help invent the solutions to these problems. Despite concerns to the contrary, the ranks of new engineers are growing in the United States. Last year, about 100,000 engineers graduated from U.S. universities with bachelor's degrees. That's a 25% increase in the last decade, according to the American Society for Engineering Education. So that's the good news. But increasing numbers aren't enough. Now more than ever, we need to ensure that all of these engineers are graduating with both the skill set and the mindset to make an impact with their life's work. We need to make sure that their educational experience prepares them for their life experience. This is no small task for institutions of higher learning like WPI, and it's one that personally motivates me to do what I do every day, and I'm sure the same is true for our faculty. We have many members of our wonderful faculty here in the audience today, and I know this motivates them as well. So re-engineering engineering education for the future is really a critical conversation, given the clear link between educating the next generation of STEM leaders and innovators and the future prosperity of our country and the quality of life for people around the world. I would venture to say there is perhaps no more important conversation that we could be engaged in on the planet today than this one about the future of engineering education. And so I'm thrilled that we have this opportunity to engage the collective brain power of our panel as we take on this key responsibility. And so let me start by introducing each one of our panelists. I'll start with my valued colleague and one of the recipients of the 2016 Bernard M. Gordon Prize, Dr. Richard Vaz, Dean of Interdisciplinary and Global Studies at WPI. Rick has long been a leader in project-based education at this university, and now, as director of our new Center for Project-Based Learning, he's working to leverage WPI's knowledge to help other institutions make their educational programs more impactful. Rick oversees one of the most distinctive elements of a WPI education, the Interactive Qualifying Project, or IQP, which gives students the opportunity to apply their knowledge of science and technology to a societal need. He also leads our Global Projects program, a network of 46 WPI project centers. I just came back from the 46th, the most recent one. Actually, Rick and I were there together in Greece, in Thessaloniki, Greece, where our students are doing wonderful work in sustainable agriculture. Every year, more than 900 students and faculty participate in this program, addressing problems for local agencies and organizations. He's published more than 50 papers in peer-reviewed forums and received numerous awards for outstanding teaching and advising, including the WPI Board of Trustees Award for Outstanding Teaching. He is a triple GOAT, receiving bachelor's, master's, and PhD in electrical engineering from WPI. Please welcome Dr. Rick Vaz. Next, I'm pleased to introduce someone who is a good friend of both Bernie Gordon and WPI, Mark Russell. Mark is the Corporate Vice President of Engineering, Technology, and Mission Assurance at Raytheon, and he will bring the critical employer's perspective to our conversation. He's also a member of the WPI Board of Trustees, and most importantly, a WPI parent of a wonderful junior here at WPI. He's very familiar with our university's mission. Mark joined Raytheon right out of college, and today he leads the company's vision in the strategic areas of technology and research, engineering, operations, performance excellence, program security, and mission assurance. I'm exhausted just reading this, Mark. He's responsible for 45,000 employees working on more than 8,000 programs. A dedicated volunteer leader, Mark chairs the board of directors of the National Action Council for Minorities in Engineering and serves on the board of the Joslin Diabetes Center. He holds 37 patents and is a fellow of both the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics and the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Mark holds a bachelor's in electrical engineering from UMass Lowell and a master's in electrical engineering from UMass Amherst. Please welcome Mark Russell. Next, I'm pleased to welcome a fellow college president, Dr. Lynn Pascarella. Dr. Pascarella is president of Mount Holyoke College, just about an hour up the pike from here. She will soon be leaving that post after a very successful tenure to become president of the American Association of the Association of American Colleges and Universities, AAC&U, an organization that WPI helped found over 100 years ago and who remains a great partner in our Center for Project-Based Learning. A distinguished philosopher and ethicist, Lynn has an abiding commitment to liberal arts as a force for good in society. She's also a strong advocate of improving college access and affordability. Before becoming the president of Mount Holyoke, Dr. Pascarella spent 23 years in public higher education at University of Rhode Island, where she was a professor of philosophy and dean of the graduate school, and at University of Hartford, where she served as provost. She's a celebrated teacher. She's written extensively on medical ethics, theoretical and applied ethics, metaphysics, public policy, and the philosophy of law. Lynn earned her bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke and her PhD in philosophy from Brown. I'm delighted that she'll provide our conversation with a powerful voice for the role of the liberal arts in educating the next generation of STEM leaders. Please welcome President Lynn Pascarella. And finally, it's an honor to introduce a man who's part of the reason we're all here today, Dr. Dan Mote, the president of the National Academy of Engineering. Dr. Mote is a nationally recognized leader and advocate for STEM education and research. He serves as vice chair of the National Research Council and is a member of its governing board. In 2005 and again in 2010, he was part of the NRC committee that authored the highly influential, and I mean highly influential, Rising Above the Gathering Storm reports about closing the competitiveness gap in America. From 1998 to 2010, Dr. Mote served as the president of the University of Maryland at College Park, where he was also the Glenn L. Martin Institute Professor of Engineering. Before that, he spent 31 years at UC Berkeley as a member of the mechanical engineering faculty. Along the way, he's taught thousands of students and mentored 58 PhD students. He's a native Californian, earning his bachelor's, master's, and PhD all at Berkeley. I guess that means he's a triple bear, right? Triple golden bear. He has earned many accolades throughout his career, including the 2011 American Society of Mechanical Engineers Medal, which is the highest honor in his field, and I'm pleased to call him a friend. We were collaborators when we were both down in the DC area. Please welcome Dr. Dan Mote. And now I'm going to go over here and do my talk show host thing. Well, welcome everybody. Just a few words about how this is going to go. I'm going to ask each of them a few questions about some different topics in STEM and engineering education, and we'll get into some discussion up here, but then we'll leave some time for questions from the audience, so be thinking about the things that you would like to discuss. And we have some microphones in the back that we can bring around, or people can stand up at the moment a little bit later. But let's start with you, Dan. As president of the NAE, you've had the opportunity to engage with government and industry leaders about the shortage of engineers in this country and the lack of available talent. You have said that, quote, ensuring a talented engineering workforce should be a national priority, unquote. How would you define a talented engineering workforce, and how can the NAE and universities like WPI help make this a national priority?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I am indeed enormously passionate about this talent question. First of all, talent is the coin of the global realm. Everybody on the planet is recruiting talent with great vigor. Every company, every university, every government. And it's not just in the United States, it's in Europe and East Asia. You can't go any place where they're not recruiting talent. But the question of talent is about what is wanted, that is, in-demand talent has now become a very high-value item. This is because of accelerating change, the need to move products quickly, move ideas quickly in research. This puts pressure on getting capabilities and facilities so you can accelerate products. That means you need people who know what to do and can work right away. You cannot go into training programs that last 1 or 2 years, as we used to do. That was a very common thing when I graduated. Right. So this pressure on talent is to have in-demand talent that can move quickly. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on universities and colleges to think about having programs that prepare and nurture what we might call in-demand talent. You can't divorce yourself from the marketplace or the needs of the world right now and the way it's going and the pace at which it's going. So that puts, I think, a great pressure on the universities. Furthermore, colleges and industry and others are not looking for very narrowly focused talents. They're looking for people who have resilience. They can actually move to domains. Very often you get hired to do one job, but by the time you show up, the job has changed before you even arrived. So that's very common, as a matter of fact. And that's because things are changing so fast. So therefore, the education has to, this talented workforce has to have a dynamism. It has to have an understanding, a mindset that it's going to change. It's going to have to move with the times, move with the topics, be sufficiently flexible in its thinking and fundamentally prepared in its preparation that it can do this. And it even wants to do this. Even sees this as a good idea, as a matter of fact, not a punishment of some kind. Right. And so this talented workforce is very special today. I think the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, by the way, identifies the talents that probably need to be embedded in the program. Of course, it picks out technical talents, as we all know, the kind of T-shaped education where you have breadth and depth, but it also talks about multiculturalism. People today, when I graduated from university, half a century ago, I knew that I wasn't going to work in my hometown in Berkeley or San Francisco or something. I knew I was going to work for General Motors, General Electric, General somebody, somewhere on the planet in the United States. And my parents were stressed that I was going to have to move around the country. But today, students are going to move around the world. We're now in a global environment, whether we like it or not. Businesses are global, other companies' businesses are global, everybody's global. People are moving around. So therefore, understanding global cultures, understanding how to work in global cultures, this multicultural perspective is extremely important for the talented workforce today. Yeah. Multidisciplinarity, and I don't mean mechanical engineering working with electrical engineering. It's physics, it's medicine, it's law, it's public policy. I mean, you need to have these kinds of experience sets in your head to be a talented person today. Social consciousness, you have to understand people, needs of people, because engineering is all about people, by the way. Engineering is about creating solutions for people in society. So you have to have this social consciousness about an understanding of people and why they need your assistance. And of course, you have to have a research or project-related experience, so you actually know how to do things and know the problems of executing and getting to products and go for it. So there are a number of areas in this that make up the talented person.
Yeah.
So I think the talented person is not narrow. The talented person is broad in perspective, broad globally, broad multiculturally in their thinking, and is prepared for it and excited about it. And they can be brought up to think this is a great way to live.
That's a great answer, and I think one that we'll dive into some more aspects of it, especially the global and others, as we 100% agree with that at WPI. I want to turn to Mark now to get his perspective on a similar question from industry's side there. What is your take on the talent in America's engineering workforce today? And where are you seeing gaps? And how can universities like WPI do a better job in helping to fill those gaps? What are the most important skills a young engineer should have when entering the workforce today from your perspective at Raytheon?
Well, first I want to thank Ann and of course Bernie Gordon, who's in the front row here. The National Academy runs this and it does very well. And I have to unabashedly say thank God they picked WPI because I am a trustee. I do have a daughter who's here. And I think they say if you're a parent, you wear your heart on your sleeve. To send your daughter here is a big deal for me. I did notice one thing. I hope I can talk about this. We were walking through the IQPs before this event. And what I noticed was fascinating was the kids I was talking to were in New Zealand, Hong Kong. I couldn't imagine all places. The engineers today are willing to go to New Zealand or Hong Kong like I was willing to go out to dinner. To me it was a huge event. For a month ahead of time I'd look at my passport, I'd figure out the schedule. I think they got up one day and said I'm going to New Zealand or Hong Kong to work on something, and it wasn't ever a thought. So WPI does that phenomenally well. So to give a little bit of a plug for why I think you won this prize is, one, and the second thing is they work on teams. So what we're finding is almost all universities, whether it was University of Maryland or WPI, we're understanding teams, and teams is more than just the electrical engineer and the mechanical engineer, but also the problems we're trying to solve are varied. One of the things I like from an industry perspective, and if we're not the largest hirer of WPI engineers, let me know.
You're in the top few, if not the top.
What I'm finding is the engineers that come out of school that are practical, hands-on, are the most valuable to industry. Let me say that again, practical, hands-on. When you do your IQP, your MQP, if you have a university that's actually having the engineers in a lab and seeing things that work, that don't happen, that have to solve a problem, even if it doesn't get solved today in academics, they are generally ready immediately to contribute to industry. Almost instantaneously when they show up, they're willing to tackle a problem. And one of the things that it's radically different for me when I went to college is, for me, it was you got a problem, you did design, you did it yourself. There was really a lot of you and I, and this is a lot of team. They're comfortable in teams, solving big problems is in teams, and everybody works together seamlessly. You don't actually know when they're briefing the IQP who's a mechanical engineer, who's a biologist, who's a chemist. I was getting a briefing from one PhD in chemical engineering, I believe, and I thought she was an electrical engineer. She was talking about piezoelectric devices, So I think that's it. I think there's one other thing that we need. You talked about gaps, and I guess one of the reasons why Raytheon is sponsoring so many masters and PhDs, to be blunt, is we need the engineers to continue on. It's not just going into academics. It's not just taking your path, going to NASA or Lincoln Labs or somewhere. We do need people. There was a woman who was getting a PhD in mechanical engineering on kind of nano powders. She was doing a presentation. I said, listen, we'll hire you tomorrow. The issue is that she was coming up with a coding for materials that were damaged. There was a way to have a fix. And those are practical things. And it's no longer enough just to get a bachelor's degree. You need to get something else. And companies will pay for it. I mean, almost every company, this isn't unique to Raytheon, this isn't unique to Lockheed Martin or even the defense industry. Most companies will very much look forward to seeing a student continue on. There are master's programs, like what Bernie Gordon is pushing on, the Gordon Fellows programs that we're into, where they learn business, they learn what it costs to do things. So the gaps are, keep going. And I have to ask one statistic. You said there are 100,000 graduating students here. I wonder if there's 100,000 retiring every year too. Compared to 300 million people in this country, it's a small number.
It is a small number, and it's a small number of the total college graduates as well. It's not. We'll talk about broadening the pipeline in a second. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Lynn, I want to turn to you, and again, welcome. We're so happy to have you here at WPI. As president of Mount Holyoke and soon the AAC&U, you will be at the helm of two of our nation's great institutions devoted to liberal education. education. How can engaging with the liberal arts help prepare students to become more effective engineering leaders?
Well, I think the liberal arts are more important than ever before, and building on what's been said already, we live in a globally interdependent, rapidly changing world, and with rapidly changing technology comes rapid obsolescence. We know that the best education that we can offer our students is a liberal arts education that teaches them to write and speak and think with precision, coherence, and clarity, to become adaptable and flexible in the face of this rapid change. But I think most importantly, to do what philosopher Martha Nussbaum refers to as engaging in moral and narrative imagination, imagining what it's like to be in the shoes of another different from oneself. The AAC&U has done a series of studies with Hart Research pointing to the fact that employers are looking for people, first and foremost, who can work well in interdisciplinary, diverse teams. And so that's what a liberal education does. For 5 years, I worked in Kenya on engineering projects looking at clean water solutions, sustainable agriculture, and entrepreneurship for women in the West Lake District near Lake Victoria. And leading this interinstitutional, interdisciplinary vertical research team where we were engaged in community action planning, we faced the problem that we had the engineering solutions. We were using clay pot water filtration, moringa seeds as natural flocculants, sand water filtration. But we were in a community where there was 80% rate of polygamy, 33% HIV rate, and where they still practiced widow inheritance. And so HIV was being perpetuated, but they didn't believe that HIV, the symptoms were caused by a virus. They thought it was chira, a cultural a disease resulting from a violation of cultural norms. So how do we implement solutions in a community where we haven't addressed the psychosocial issues, which first involved a mistrust of the team members who were trying to serve them?
Right.
And so without the ability to engage in the psychosocial aspects of community projects, we will not be effective. And we saw that in one of the projects today, the group working on global warming and the impact on flooding in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And they were saying, you know, if you have a population that is reluctant to believe in global warming and they think that this is motivated by an attempt of the government to raise taxes, then you're not going to make any progress. So that's why liberal education is more important than ever before in implementing engineering solutions. And that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, wonderful. So Rick, my friend, first of all, congratulations on the Gordon Prize. I think we should clap. Don't you think we should clap? You and your colleagues, we're excited to celebrate you here today. Of everyone on this panel, you are the one who is most closely engaged with engineering students on a daily basis. So talk a little bit about how WPI's project-based education prepares engineers to succeed in the workforce and solve complex problems in the real world.
Well, I think as the three speakers who preceded me have pointed out, preparing students for the challenges that they'll face is not simple. And when I think about the challenges that our students are going to face, I think about the grand challenges that have been put forth by the National Academy. The big, messy problems related to energy and the environment, food and water, security,
Medicine.
public health. These problems have a lot of things in common. They're interdisciplinary. They're very complicated. They're going to require a lot of people coming together. And they're what some people like to call wicked problems in that they involve stakeholders who have priorities that are sometimes at odds with one another. When the WPI faculty adopted the plan 45 years ago and implemented this project-based curriculum, I think they were seeing ahead a little bit to a time when students would face some of these challenges. The idea was that if we want to produce graduates who are capable of solving complex real-world problems, the best way to do that would be to give them the challenge of solving those problems while they're still students. And so at this point, we have over 22,000 graduates of the WPI plan who've gone through that curriculum. And a couple of years ago, we took the opportunity to go out and ask them about the long-term impacts of those projects on their careers and also on their lives. And we heard some really interesting things. They told us a lot of stories of professional success. They told us that doing those projects had helped prepare them for leadership, problem solving, teamwork, communication. They talked a lot about personal impacts as well. They talked about the projects helping them develop a stronger personal character, a sense of commitment, and a belief in their own ability to make a difference. And finally, they talked about the ability that the projects had to help them always keep in mind the big picture surrounding the work that they're doing. Obviously, we need to prepare students, as Dan was suggesting, that really know how to drill down and get it right. But equally importantly, they need to understand the big picture so that they're asking the right questions and they're motivated by the right principles when they're doing that work.
Very nice. Thank you. I think that's sort of set up the context of the issues and the opportunities very, very well. And I think some of the challenges, how do we then take those things and put them into practice and sort of to both solve some of the challenges within the educational system itself, but then to apply our abilities to solve some of the world's problems. As we talk about the pipeline a little bit more for a second, those 100,000 engineering graduates do not reflect the diversity of students in college today, and those students do not reflect the diversity of our country. And that, to me, one of the easiest ways, or not easiest, one of the best ways to increase those numbers, to Mark's point, is to simply make that pipeline look more like our nation, to increase that diversity. Just to give you a little bit of a statistical context here, according to the American Society for Engineering Education, of all bachelor's degrees in engineering earned in 2014, 20% were earned by women, 9.3% by Hispanic Americans, and 4.3% by Black or African Americans. So this is a major issue in the future of engineering education as well, and I wanted to touch on it a little bit here in our conversation. So start with Mark. You serve on Raytheon's Executive Diversity Leadership Team, and you've been a strong advocate for increasing gender and racial diversity in STEM fields. You've also spoken about attracting more military veterans into STEM careers. Can you just give us your thinking about how greater diversity contributes to the talent of the engineering workforce, and why is this an important part of the conversation?
So we need 2 more hours. So that was a big question with a lot of answers, so I'll give you one thought piece. First, a lot of the boards I serve on trying to fight that, and I'll say it the way I think about it is we want a workforce in engineering that looks like America. And it's not necessarily to force everybody to be the same, but to force people to have the ability to do what they want. And I'll say what I'm saying here is once you get to industry, we talk about inclusiveness, not necessarily diversity. I mean, as you get through high school, college, and talk about that whole pipeline, once you get to industry, our goal is to be inclusive. The number one reason why people will leave a company or leave anything is they don't feel included. They're left out. They're not part of a group. They're not part of a team. Almost always when somebody leaves that may be under 20 years experience at Raytheon or any level of experience, to be honest with you, it's because they didn't feel included. They weren't on the team. Somehow they were left out. Their voice wasn't heard. And maybe even the way they presented their voice in engineering wasn't thought of in an important way. And many times our designs fail because of that. We don't hear all the voices because the way the people are. They may be shy. They may not want to bring it forward. They may not have the culture they want to bring forward. If you think about before they come into industry, first of all, there's such a shortage that we could hire many. I mean, I don't know how many of those 100,000 electrical engineers or computer scientists, but by the time all is said and done, you're probably producing hundreds, if that, electrical engineers. And so when all is said and done, I think I made Joe an offer, and he said yes or no because there's so few. We get right down to who's graduating. And when you talk about people getting PhDs, there are 4. Somewhere. That, and this is every school, this isn't just WPI. We actually recruit them the way people draft athletes almost these days. Right. The one issue that I found is, if I could pick my number one reason, I'll let everybody else have a chance of this, is people stumble. They stumble financially, economically, they don't do well in their first math class. Whatever reason, and I don't want to blame it all on society, we need to give people a chance to recover from that first stumble. Most people walk away from an engineering or STEM type degree because they stumbled early on. They were missing some gap in math or some gap in physics or chemistry, or they had a teacher who said, hey, you shouldn't do this, and all of a sudden that career is closed, and they take themselves out. Self-selection out is the largest thing I see. So we actually, in many cases, the National Action Committee, Council for Minority Engineering, is trying to give scholarships in the 5-year range. So things like that. But I think there's got to be a way to pull people through, and when they have that first stumble, it's okay. There's a saying I always have that I tell people is, you don't know it now, but you don't know it yet. You will know it. You will figure it out. We're smarter today than we were 30 years ago because we kept on learning and we got more mature. I think WPI does a great job of that. They have a lot of processes, and I think one of the things you have is a tutoring world. I forget what it's called. It's kind of a cool name, where people can just get help. Which is another thing that engineers don't do. And you don't understand something, well, I'm going to spend 20 hours in the weekend learning how to do this thing.
I'm not going to sleep until I
I'm not
figure
gonna
this out.
But if you just go ask somebody a question and get some help, you might make it. So that's my 2 cents is we need to do a better job of getting through that first stumble.
And I think the other thing we do is that you can't flunk a course here. You NR, as all of the WPI people know, you get no record.
Right.
So you're allowed to stumble and recover. And I think that's a really critical part of what the WPI plan
I'm going to say something that
offered.
this is hard for people. Is I ask people when I interview them for big jobs. You want to run 3,000 people, 400 people, whatever it is, engineers, lots of engineers. I ask people where they failed. And if they haven't failed, I don't know what to do with them. Because they're going to fail. I mean, we're going to fail. We fail all the time. We fail often. And the best thing is, how do you deal with that failure? How do you deal with the people? How do you deal with the problem? How do you deal with your boss, the customer? But you're going to fail. So people haven't gotten through something where they haven't failed or figured out life isn't easy. It's hard to make them leaders and managers if they haven't figured out that everything doesn't work because they weren't perfect all along the way.
Well, that'll be good. We'll remember that next time students come to us sort of downtrodden about getting that NR. I mean, not only is it not on your record, but in fact, this is an answer for a job interview question.
It is.
And this guy,
you struggled with something,
5,000 engineers a year. They hire.
We do.
5,000 engineers a year, right there.
Yeah, we do.
So,
a little over 5,000.
I think of those 100,000 graduates.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, it's people get all bent out of shape about whether they get an A or a B or whether they did something right or wrong and they spill their guts on their interview. Don't do that. We just want to understand what you're. But the IQPs and MQPs help you learn, and that's the biggest help. I think the hands-on, do some work, right? And that's what WPI grads give us. They come ready to do work, and they're willing to be flexible. Many of our leadership at Raytheon, I call punches above their weight, because they were learning how to do jobs.
Right.
But anyways.
Lynn, you participated in the 2014 White House Summit on increasing opportunities for low-income students. How can we, this is another dimension of diversity and inclusion, I think. I think, again, STEM degrees can be really enabling for students from low-income backgrounds, but how can we encourage more of these students to set their sights on a college degree and particularly a STEM degree?
It's a challenge. I mean, there is a growing economic segregation in American higher education. 1 out of every 2 students who begins with aspirations of earning a bachelor's degree drops out. More than 50% of students are beginning college at community colleges, and their graduation rate is on average 17%. In order to redress the growing economic segregation in higher education, we have to take seriously this notion of colleges and universities as civic missions. Benjamin Barber, political scientist, had talked about the fact that we not only have to educate people to be free, but we have to free them to be educable by serving as a visible force in the lives of the most marginalized, disenfranchised members of society. We have to partner with K through 12, business, industry, to make ourselves visible in the lives of those who are most marginalized. There's been a lot of rhetoric during this election year about a lack of value added of higher education and liberal education in particular. When Senator Rubio says we need more welders and less philosophers, we can spend time mocking his grammar and showing that, in fact, philosophers make more than welders. But in doing so, we run the risk of ignoring the underlying message, which is that education is too expensive, it's too difficult to access, and it doesn't teach people 21st century skills. That is not the case here. But we can't just talk to ourselves. We have to talk to those outside of the academy, those who are making decisions about funding both public and private education. So I think the best way to make a difference is by creating maker spaces, doing what you're doing, making your students available as a resource, making your faculty available. And I know as administrators, as trustees, as representatives of major organizations, you're out there making the case for this type of education.
Right. Thank you. So Rick, I threw this one in. You guys saw mostly similar kinds of questions ahead of time. I threw this one in, though, on you. We know that the project experiences, based on the survey data that you just mentioned,
Right.
have an even more positive effect on women than men.
Yes.
So is there something there that can help us diversify STEM? How do you think about that?
I think it presents an enormous opportunity. So as Lori implied, when we looked at the results from the alumni study, we were surprised, we weren't expecting this, to find that in every area, professional development, personal development, it didn't matter which category it was, women reported more strongly positive impacts from project-based learning than men. So we started digging into some of the research that had been done about the differences in the conditions under which men and women learn well. There's lots of evidence that women are more highly motivated than men by collaborative work, and women are more highly motivated than men by work that has the potential to help others, to make a positive difference. I think this presents a very clear pathway for STEM educators regarding the way that curriculum can be redesigned in ways that will be more welcoming to women. And by the way, the research also shows that that is going to be more welcoming to students
everyone.
of color as well.
Yeah, everyone.
And
Yeah.
I think this is the way we can make engineering look a little bit more like America, is by providing them with this type of education, which we know is more powerful and impactful than the traditional
agree.
format.
Laurie,
Yes, please, Dan.
Can I comment on
Please.
on this? I don't know if my microphone's on or not.
Oh,
I couldn't agree more. I think Rick this got this exactly right. And it's not just a one-off case at WPI. I think it's, if you look at every program I can think of, this turns out to be true. This is a general truth. If you look at Engineers Without Borders, for example, the participants in Engineers Without Borders, by the way, are dominantly women. Now, only 18% of engineering students in the United States are women, by the way. But if you look at Engineers Without Borders, over half of them are women. If you look at the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, dominantly women, 57% women.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great statistic.
So this of course, women are interested in helping people and other people, and boys are interested in blowing things up. So you have
Slight
these.
generalization, but
You have this.
when we get them together, we're not going to blow people up. That's the key. We're not doing that.
Well, you try a few videos and so on, see what kind of reaction you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
from men and women. It's pretty much the same. So this characteristic that you're describing is very fundamental and very important. In fact, where do the women go in engineering? They go to bioengineering. They go to environment dominantly. Fortunately, they do not yet go to mechanical engineering. Where they say civil engineers design targets and mechanical engineers devise weapons. I think, but this is a really important matter. And the other thing I would say, Rick, along the line of what you're talking about, is that the projects that you're talking about embed in a very natural way all the issues you need. You don't have to say, okay, now students, we're going to talk about multiculturalism. Now we're going to talk about multidisciplinarity for a while, for this week. We're going to have a lecture on multidisciplinarity and so on. All of those issues, multiculturalism, multidisciplinarity, social consciousness, business developments for viable products, research experience, hands-on research experience to see if it works or not, or why doesn't it work in the experience. All of those things are naturally embedded in these big system projects, like providing clean water for the planet. If students want to take on providing clean water for the planet, those issues are embedded in those in a global scale. So it's the most natural construct for an objective-based engineering education.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's interesting, and it sounds like to me that one of the major, so you've taken on diversity initiatives as being very important at the NAE. Do you see the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and maybe you can say a little bit more about what it is for people in the audience who might not be familiar. Do you see that as one of the main mechanisms to achieve diversity goals in engineering, did you want to say anything else about what's happening at the NAE in that area?
You start me on the Grand Challenge Program. You'll have
2 minutes.
You'll have to stop me. 2 minutes. All right. 2008.
Yeah.
2008. The National Academy of Engineering appointed a committee, a very distinguished committee, people like Larry Page and and so Craig Venter and so on, and they undertook the following question. This is the first in the world, by the way. The question was, what does engineering need to deliver for the planet to continue life? What does engineering need to deliver to continue life on the planet in this century? Okay, so in other words, what are the big questions? Now, engineering's never had a vision for the future in history that I know of. They essentially laid out a vision for engineering for the next 100 years on what problem, and it came up with 14 problems. These 14 goals that need to be satisfied for life to continuation on the planet in this century. These 14 goals are called the grand challenges for engineering. They're related in the sense they're all part of needing to be solved to achieve this vision, but they're quite different from each other. But they're all global problems. They're not national problems. They're not a company problem. They're problems for the planet. They actually involve everybody on the planet, every engineer on the planet, and every country on the planet. So it's a very exciting topic, especially to students and especially to women, as a matter of fact. And so one of them would be providing clean water for everybody on the planet, not just the billion people that don't have it today, but the 2 to 3 billion that will be born by 2050. Another is advanced personalized learning. Another would be derive energy from fusion. Another one is make solar energy economical. And another one is secure cyberspace. And so these are big engineering system problems that are multinational, multicultural, to embed in various countries. So that's what the grand challenges for engineering is. Then, in 2009, 2 deans of engineering and a president of Olin College, Rick Miller, Tom Katsouleas, who was a dean at Duke, and Rick Miller, the dean at USC, and Rick Miller, who was the president of Olin College, they said, okay, if these are the grand challenges for engineering in this century for the planet, shouldn't we start having our students think about problems like this? These 14, but there could be others that you might dream of. So it's not necessarily picking the problem exactly, but it's problems like this. And they created this Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And this Grand Challenge Scholars Program, by the way, is now in China and India and Egypt and Australia. And of course, about 1/3 of all deans of engineering in the United States signed a letter that was hand-delivered by me to the President of the United States committing to graduate over 20,000 Grand Challenge scholars in the next decade. And this is all out of the grassroots. This is not being funded by government, not being funded by industry, not being funded by individuals. It's individuals seeing that these visions are important for the planet and important for our students, and the students are clamoring for these topics as well. So it's, in my view, the best idea that's come along for first explaining engineering to the public. What is engineering? And also the best idea for thinking about how engineering education ought to be framed. And I think it's very similar to what we heard earlier that's happening at WPI, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, we were signatory to that letter and have a Grand Challenge Scholars Program as part of one of our initiatives in our strategic plan that we call Major and a Mission. So it's not just about your major anymore, it's also about your mission and helping students find that. And Grand Challenge sort of scholar tracks are going to become an embedded part of or are becoming an embedded part of our curriculum as part of sort of the next iteration of the WPI plan. So that's a very exciting thing. I want to just do one more question kind of for the whole panel, and then we'll open it up. So be thinking of your questions out there about how we start to infuse some of these ideas into the academy, into academic institutions. Maybe it's just me, but I've noticed that educational institutions can be somewhat rigid in their frameworks for, and maybe especially engineering education has a fairly rigid, we can't possibly fit that in. Oh, but what about the, various homework problems that they need to be doing? And so I'm just interested to hear ideas and some discussion about what are some things, some real practical things that you can think of that we might be able to do in order to really start a more massive shift in engineering education. I know you've been building maker spaces in Mount Holyoke and engaging the community in different ways there. Does anyone have ideas that they might want to share about how how to start to implement some of these ideas even more broadly. And I think 20,000 engineers is fantastic, but that's 20,000 over 10 years, that's 2,000 a year, we're graduating 100,000. So even bringing these ideas up to scale, I think that's one of the real challenges. Who has thoughts to share about that? Yes.
Well, at Holyoke, we have broadened our curriculum in a way that encourages students to be intellectually adventurous. And
I love that term.
We found that our students were reluctant to experiment with courses that they thought they wouldn't get an A in or do very well. So we challenge our students to excel. What we've done is to be subversive about this, to draw them in. And in addition to the maker spaces, we have students take what their major is and apply engineering and computer science to those areas. So in our intro to computer science course, programming course, we had one student who was a dance major who designed a skirt that lit up when her posture wasn't correct for a particular dance move. We had a music major who developed a program that allowed her to learn whether she was on pitch. Somebody who was who was a literature major developed a children's book about a chameleon that changed colors. And the students were stunned that they were actually doing computer science and applied engineering work. And their capacity to do very simple techniques like that allowed them to think of themselves as going into engineering. And so it is encouraging people to be innovators in their own lives by drawing them in from whatever perspective they're coming from. And I think that's something that we should be doing in K through 12, the very earliest stages.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Rick, you want to add something?
So, as you know, Lori, last summer WPI partnered with the Association of American Colleges and Universities to offer an institute on project-based learning. And we had a sense that there was something that we had to offer higher education as far as promoting what has become widely recognized in higher education as more successful practices, high engagement, high impact learning practices. There's a lot of evidence based on 20 or 30 years of research by AAC&U, by the National Survey of Student Engagement, the Gallup Purdue study last summer. It's all showing very clearly that the type of education that we're talking about, where students are grappling collaboratively with real problems, is the way to go. So what's the problem? And in working with these colleges and universities who came to us, all types of colleges and universities, different sizes, some technical, some not, public, private, we found committed faculty who understood what they wanted to do, and we could help them with some strategies and some tools, but what they really need to figure out how to do is to change the culture on their campuses. Throughout too much of higher education, the predominant mode of instruction is a professor in front of a room delivering a lecture. And nowhere is this a bigger problem than in engineering education, where too many curricula consist of a long list of required courses. And so what we're finding from these partnerships that we have with other colleges and universities is that a lot of what is required is to help universities figure out how to solve those cultural and political barriers and help support faculty to develop the courage to adopt these approaches to learning, which have been shown to be far more effective.
I guess, this is going to be one of the most purely industrial answer you're ever going to hear, so please,
Awesome. That's
turn
why
off
we got you
turn
here.
off the
That's great.
radios, whatever you get going. My communications person is going to have a heart attack. So,
That wouldn't be the first time I'm
the issue is this: when you try to grow leaders in engineering, there are three things you kind of need. You need someone who pays attention to detail, has domain knowledge, and good judgment. And good judgment is probably the most valuable thing. You get that from experience.
Yeah.
What we expect from universities who come to me and say, hey, I want to change the mechanical engineering program, I want to change these things, is I would prefer to see it in the graduate program. In the undergraduate, what I really get from WPI is this great project-based learning, but I get people who are good mechanical engineers, who are good electrical engineers. So there is a core amount of classes that's so many and so hard. The problem we have is that we have to tailor back some of the things that have been added. there are core principles you have to learn as an engineer. Right? You have to, if you're an electrical engineer, you have to learn electronics and electromagnetics and circuit theory. But what we've done is piled on so much. The curriculum is now 10 pounds in a 5 bag. And what I'd like to see in industry is have people get their degree, get good at the domain knowledge of whatever they are. If they're an electrical engineer, I'm hiring an electrical engineer. So the problem is industry is propelling this kind of problem, right? We want a mechanical engineer to come in and know how to put 2 pipes together or whatever it is, and do that well, because that adds value, we pay for that, it's kind of an exchange of value. And then eventually do the master's programs and so on, where they're collaborative, they work on projects and the missions. It's a little bit more challenging for the student because they really want to come out of school and actually find employment. And that is really the comment here that's not easily said. But what is the number, 98% of WPI grads and find jobs? Is
No,
it
they all
100%?
find jobs, yeah.
Yeah, they all find jobs. I mean, so I hate to say this, and I'm going to say the wrong thing, but I have 2 kids going into STEM. I mean, if they want to get a PhD in psychology, I'm okay with that. If they want to do an undergraduate, it's going to be harder for me. So I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, how many parents in this room want their kids to go to WPI? Most, or MIT or RPI. So it's hard. Although there's so few, and I'm not trying to devalue it, there is this economic problem of engineering produces a great livelihood. And we draw them into that because they have domain knowledge. So how do we change that curriculum? I love that curriculum, and that's my problem.
I would argue that there are ways to learn some of those skills that are more impactful for students.
And I think your project
Yeah.
base is what it is,
Yeah.
what's doing that.
I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Dan, do you
I-
want to add something brief, and then I want to open it up so you have time to take a couple questions from the audience.
Well, I think there are a couple of points. And by the way, I completely agree. You need to have solid foundational learning knowledge. I mean, that's clear. But you also need a mindset established early about the fact you have to have breadth here, you have to have these other qualities, you have to realize you're going to work around the world, you have to realize you're going to work in other cultures. You need to get that, and through possibly courses you take, but international experiences, you have projects overseas and things like that. So I think you can do both. I don't think you...
It's not an either or, it's a both and.
But a second point, which is really characteristic of engineering, and I think it's why Rick may have said this is something you predominantly see in engineering, is that engineering has that kind of a relic from its trade school days in its academic programs, and that's called ABET. You have a curriculum that's established, it's a tool set, a quality set curriculum that you need to have this characteristic and this characteristics as if these are going to be your career in some way. And so you're qualifying the program by the inputs, not by the outputs, not by what competencies you want to see at graduation. You're about what training you need at the front end. And I think that is what constrains the program so much and allows so little flexibility in able to go in these different directions.
Yeah.
So if ABET actually looked at competencies rather than inputs and wanted to qualify programs based on the competencies, it seems like it makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
And also it would allow the programs to be dynamic so that as this rapidly changing world we live in, those competencies are going to shift. I mean, whether we like it or not, they're going to shift, and therefore our programs will have to shift accordingly. So I think that's all screwed up, frankly.
So let's fix that. So there's a good one.
Do they have schools get able
we
to
have.
put it all of them?
Well, you pretty much, you have to explain a lot of things to your legislature if all of a sudden you become unaccredited.
Okay, I'm sorry.
David was also one of the leaders in terms of having social impact and ethics built into
Yeah.
their
That's true.
accreditation requirements.
So it's not anything bad, but I think, but if it
There's
focused
a
more
lot of
on
rigidity. Yeah.
more on competencies rather than courses in
Right.
certain years and things like that.
More on the outcome than the
Yeah.
specifics on the how. So can I ask our audience, does someone have a question? If so, could you either step up to the mic or raise your hand, and we'll bring it to you for our panel. Yes. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. You have a question. That's why you're standing there? I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I apologize. Please.
No problem. I figured you couldn't see me. I work in the entrepreneurship program. I came here in 2000 to help build out an experiential portfolio of activities for our students, our alumni, and faculty. And a lot of times we see students come in with 100 ideas, and we don't want to go down that path. We want to find students, these innovative students at WPI that have not just iterative inventions or iterative innovation or iterative thinking. They need to do paradigm-changing kind of thinking. Because I'm thinking now, after hearing about the 14 challenges, that poor planet Earth is at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. It needs to survive. So we really need to find a way to reward students and faculty that want to research and teach paradigm-changing innovations, and students that want to grasp that and bring these changes to the marketplace. How would any of you recommend that we can seek out, develop, and reward this kind of thinking, this more paradigm-changing versus the iterative? I don't think we have time for iterative.
Anybody have any thoughts they want to share?
I'll give it a try. After many years of having our students tackle problems in the latter half of their curriculum, about 10 years ago, we started having our students take on big global problems through the Great Problem Seminar in the first year. And these kids are freshmen. You know, they don't really have enough knowledge in engineering and science to come up with a complete workable solution to many of the problems that they're taking on, particularly when those problems are rooted in some of the fundamental challenges of the grand challenges. But the idea, along the lines that you were talking about with major and omission, Laurie, is that the authenticity and urgency of these problems inspires a lot of our students to rise to the challenge in the way that you're talking about. Our students come to us with a lot of talent and ability, but I think one of the most important things that we can do when they arrive is provide them with motivation. And that motivation, if we properly nurture it, can become passion, which can become a lifelong pursuit.
I want to let Pamela, or unless you want to quickly, yeah, please, please.
And one of the challenges we've had in American higher education is that the students who are coming to us have been barraged with standardized tests, which test students on problems for which we already know the answers, and we need to test them on problems for which we don't have the answers. We need to instill and engender those kinds of skills necessary to grapple with global challenges. And in the academy, we've been complicit in this, in that we reward faculty with tenure who are narrowly focused, who are publishing articles that maybe 6 people will read, whereas we're not rewarding them for solving global or local problems.
Or attempting
and
to
so
do
we
so,
need to change the reward system within the academy.
Nice.
First of all, this has been such an amazing panel. Thank you so much. But as an engineering professor for 23 years, the things I'm hearing, I wish we could send a tape of this to all of my colleagues all over the country. So that is my point. I mean, how do we take this conversation beyond this room? Because so many things that each and every one of you has said, these are the things that are going to impact that inclusion in the pipeline. These are the things that are going to impact how faculty are viewed and the number of students that are interested in pursuing and staying in an engineering career. So how do we deputize or evangelize so that the conversation really moves away from the people who are the ones who are probably going to succeed in engineering anyway, to those communities that really do need to hear this message?
That's a great question. I think it's a question about scaling, and I think each one of the organizations represented up here has a role to play there, and I don't know if any of you want to talk about your role. I think Rick has already talked about the Center for Project-Based Learning and how we are taking it on as a part of our responsibility as an institution to take what we've learned over 45 years of implementing the WPI plan of building experiential learning, not just we send this tiny sliver of our students abroad. It's no, 100% of the students and 100% of the faculty at WPI are engaged in project-based experiential learning. We've learned a lot by doing that, and I think we are, instead of just saying this is great for our students, which it is, we're taking on as a responsibility to try to figure out how do we engage more faculty from across the country in this thing that we believe so strongly in. But I mean, AAC&U has a role, the academies have a role, and industry has a role to play as well. Do any of you want to jump into that?
Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Go for it.
I don't apologize, but I admit that I am completely captured by the Grand Challenges and the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. We got about almost a third of the deans of the United States, but 122 have signed this, and I was at MIT yesterday, and they signed up subsequently. So there are at least 123 now have signed up for this.
They're getting with the program over there at MIT.
They're following WPI in this. I think so. So this is a large body of leadership in engineering education, and of course, once you get that number, this could be the tipping point where I expect the others to, be drawn into this. Well, that's all project-based learning. I mean, this is Grand Challenge Scholars Program. I mean, it's got all the pieces in it that you want for an engineering education, naturally embedded in it. So I think it's a big step in this direction, and that's why I believe it's one of the best ideas for transforming engineering education. And it's so attractive. It's drawn all these people. By the way, you can't get 123 deans to do something without giving them any money. No money. There's no money from government, no money from the academy, no money from the industry, no money from the private sector. They just said this is the right thing to do. And somehow they're going to figure out how to pay for it. Well, this is, of course, a temporary state, I would say. But nonetheless, it demonstrates the power of the idea. And of course, it's like a movement. It's not like a project. And movements have a way of making big things happen. In fact, movements are the only thing that make big things happen. And so, by the way, I think this is a big thing for the United States. I also think it's a big thing for India and China and so forth. So I think around the world, this idea can take place. I'll make one final comment on this. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I apologize.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Dean Kamen, many of you know who Dean Kamen is.
Went to WPI.
He's WPI. Yes, right. He didn't graduate, however.
You did not hear me say that he's a graduate of WPI.
He said he spent
You heard me say he went to WPI.
He told me he spent 7 years in his first year, somehow. Anyway, Dean has started First Robotics, very successful program, been over 25 years. It's in 83 or 86 countries now, about 45,000 robotics competitions a year. And about 1 million people associated with First Robotics. I mean, it's just a spectacular
Extraordinary
event.
success.
If you ever have a chance to see it, be part of it. Dean, of course, is a member of the National Academy of Engineering. In fact, he was a member of the original 2008 Grand Challenge Scholars Committee itself. And he's been to 2 international summits we've had and so forth. And he and I worked out this arrangement that First Robotics is going to take on a Grand Challenge topic for its robotics competitions. So we're, in fact, in 2017, we're going to have a global summit on the grand challenges in Washington, and immediately following it, First Robotics is going to have its first international competition on a grand challenge topic, bringing countries from all over the world to work on this topic. So this grand challenge idea and grand challenge scholars idea has got legs. It's actually reaching out around the planet. So I think we should try to move it. And I think if we have so many deans involved to start with, it's a good foundation of a body of people that might want to help push this.
That's great. Thank you so much. I hate to cut it off, but I know that we probably should be moving into the actual presentation of the Gordon Prize to our winners and our university. And so what I think I would like to do is have us all thank our panel for a wonderful conversation. And we are just going to have a very brief change of set up here, so no more than a couple of minutes. And we will be back with you for the official festivities. Again, thank you all so much for being with us.
Well, good afternoon. It is my name is Dan Mote. I'm the president of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering, and it's my great privilege, really, to welcome the laureates, family, friends, colleagues, and guests to this Gordon Prize ceremony. I'm also pleased to welcome Senator Harriet L. Chandler, State Senate Majority Leader, and Gladys Rodriguez, Senior District Representative from the office of Congressman James P. McGovern, here today. I sincerely thank the Worcester Polytechnic Institute President Lori Leshin, an old friend, by the way, and Provost Bruce Burstin and Dean David Sagansky for arranging and hosting this really splendid event. Also with us are members of the Gordon Prize Selection Committee, Mr. Bernie Gordon, of course, Committee Chair John Wall, Dr. John Wall, retired Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Cummins, Mr. Arthur Goldstein, retired Chairman and CEO of Ionics Incorporated, Committee Advisors Mr. Harold Goldberg and Mr. Olaf Johnson, and ex officio and NAE Vice President Dr. Coralie Brierly, ex officio and NAE Executive Officer Dr. Alton Romig. Al Romig is here as well. It's my privilege this afternoon to present the NAE's, indeed, the world's most prestigious award in engineering education, the Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. We are very fortunate to have Bernie Gordon with us here today, but let's first take a moment to learn a little about this remarkable engineer who is behind this prize.
The Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education was inaugurated in 2002 by the National Academy of Engineering. The intent of the Gordon Prize is to recognize new modalities and experiments in education that develop effective engineering leaders. Now, for over 10 years, the Gordon Prize has recognized individuals that have innovated in areas such as curricular design, teaching methods, and technology-enabled learning that strengthen students' capabilities and desire to grow into leadership roles.
The award was created to recognize professors, teachers in technical institutions who understood that there was much more to engineering than learning theory, and that there was a need to inculcate, not in everyone, because that's not possible, an attitude. There's an old phrase that it takes knowledge, skills, and attitude to be a successful engineer, let alone an engineering leader.
This knowledge, skills, and attitude propelled Bernard M. Gordon to found or contribute to multiple companies and institutions throughout his long career, earning over 200 patents, being awarded the National Medal of Technology, being inducted to the National Academy of Engineering, among numerous other honors and awards, in general, embodying the very spirit of his namesake award.
So this attitude is one, you don't get born with it. It's one that gets developed by your teachers, the successes of your jobs, your understanding that after a while you're expected to do that. And it's a hard thing to put into words.
Fostering these leadership skills in engineering is vital to making the profession personally rewarding, successful in the competitive marketplace, and enriching to society at large. The Gordon Prize recognizes educational efforts that cultivate this leadership.
Both the National Academy of Engineering and I together recognized that the educational process in technology had changed so much over the past decades that there was now a dearth of engineering leaders. It does not take a large percentage of engineers to be leaders. It's about the same ratio as a platoon leader to a combat platoon. 1 in 20. If you can get 1 in 20 engineers to have the capability, the desire, the will to be the leader, you increase the productivity tremendously. It's not about academic achievement, it's about industrial, real-world turning out products that society needs that will enhance the economy of the United States.
These leadership qualities are critical to America's competitiveness in the 21st century. The teachers and educational approaches that are recognized by the Gordon Prize are an immense service to the engineering community, to the engineer as an individual, and make the world a better place for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage here Mr. Bernard M. Gordon, President Leshin, and Dr. Wall. They will assist me in presenting the Gordon Prize for 2016. Oh, I says we have the whole family here, including the winners. That's great. So before we present the prize, a little information about it might be helpful for you. Recipients of the Gordon Prize receive $500,000 cash award, half granted to the recipients and the other half granted to the institution to support the continuing development, refinement, and dissemination of the recognized innovation. The recipients also, of course, receive a commemorative medallion and a certificate as well. In addition, the recipients are invited to present a public lecture on their prize during the National Academy of Engineering's annual meeting in Washington this year on Sunday, October the 9th. And now, the 2016 recipients of the Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. They are Professor Duran Apelian, Dean Arthur C. Heinricher, Dean Richard F. Vaz, who you have met before, and Associate Dean Kristen Wobe. They are recognized for a project-based engineering curriculum developing leadership, innovation, problem-solving, interdisciplinary collaborations, and global competencies. We should give them all a hand at this point. Now, you all, as I call your name, I invite each of you to the podium to receive your prize and have your picture taken, of course. And after everyone has received his or her prize, we will gather for a group photograph. First, Duran Apelian, Alcoa Howitt Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Director of the Metal Processing Institute. Arthur C. Heinricher, Dean of Undergraduate Studies. Arthur. Richard F. Vaz, Dean, Interdisciplinary and Global Studies Division. And Kristen K. Wobe, Associate Dean, Undergraduate Studies. Oh, sure. I won't. See, I now invite Dr. Appelian to offer remarks on behalf of his colleagues on their prize-winning institute program. Duran?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be here today at this celebratory event. It is my privilege to represent the recipients of this distinguished honor, representing WPI, our university, and my colleagues here on the stage. However, I also stand here on behalf of a legion of colleagues who had the courage 45 years ago to adopt a new paradigm that disrupted the norm in engineering education by introducing an outcomes-based approach to learning, and who had the tenacity required to keep that program alive and to continually renew it. Thus, we, the 4 recipients of the Gordon Prize, humbly accept the honor in tribute to a remarkable community of talented and dedicated individuals. We wish to remember one colleague in particular, WPI's first Dean of Undergraduate Studies, William Grogan. During his more than 40 years at WPI, Bill helped shape the original WPI plan and was the individual most responsible for its successful implementation and growth. Our only wish is that he could have been with us today to relish this recognition. WPI is being recognized for what we have accomplished, and it is indeed a proud day for the entire community. What we collectively, and I mean collectively, have done is quite remarkable. We practice active learning. We inspire our young women and men to make a difference by being part of the solution in tackling the most important challenges our society faces. We secure that our students learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, that they can tackle fuzzy situations where the problems are not well defined, if at all defined. We encourage our students to work in teams so they learn the benefits of collaboration and the value of collaborative impact. We provide transformational experiences and opportunities for our students. We collectively have established more than 42 global sites where our students are immersed in another culture while doing their projects in their 3rd year. The human dimension and the social implications of technological solutions are not foreign to our students. In closing, we thank the NAE and Mr. Gordon for this extraordinary recognition. I'm certain that I speak for my colleagues and the whole WPI community when I say that this award ensures that we will continue to innovate and work for change in engineering education. This is a critical time for higher education, as our President Leshin talked about in the panel. It's a critical time in America. Many colleges and universities are struggling to solve problems ranging from the cost of education, access to education, sustainability, and security. The Gordon Prize has been and will continue to be one of the strongest forces for innovation far into the future, and we thank you, Mr. Gordon, for that.
Well, thank you, Duran, Art, Rick, and Chris. We are honored to have you join our really esteemed family of Gordon Prize recipients. It's now my pleasure to turn the podium over to President Leshin for her remarks. Lori.
Thank you. Again, it's such a thrill to be here with all of you today, especially to have both Bernie and Dan here today with us to celebrate what we do every single day here at WPI, which is not only about educating the next generation of great engineers, and we do that, but it's also about really educating the next generation of engineers to be leaders in engineering, to be engineering leaders. We take that seriously. We do it every day. And it's just such a thrill to know that the contribution that we are making is being recognized. I'm so thrilled for our faculty who are being honored, and frankly, all of our faculty who contribute to this every single day on our campus. Before we conclude this wonderful and memorable ceremony, it is my great pleasure to invite our State Senator Harriet Chandler to the podium. In addition to serving as Worcester's senior member of the state legislature, Senator Chandler is currently the Massachusetts Senate Majority Leader. I did have that right earlier. And she'll present a citation from the Senate. And here's a little known fact, which we just learned about her. Am I allowed to say this? What, your very first job out of college, right? She taught at WPI. Huh? Huh? Welcome, Senator Chandler.
I did indeed teach my very first job out of graduate school, and I am honored today to be here representing the Great and General Court, representing the Massachusetts Senate as its majority leader, but most importantly to me, this is my district that you are in today. I represent WPI in the Great and General Court. WPI is a treasure in our community. I say that your 151-year tradition, your 151-year history certainly shows that. Passion, imagination, innovation, persistence, all of these things represent what you are about and what your students are about. And indeed, I know personally that you really teach these students how to solve complex real-world problems. I know that because I have used your students, your team of students, to come to the Senate and help us solve our problems. And I say that very sincerely because as we go forward in history, we're going to need more as legislators of the kind of technical know-how that you can offer us. We need that in terms of solar energy. We need this in terms of water. We need this in terms of climate control, on and on and on. And so we will continue to turn to WPI. And quite frankly, those students learn from very good people because we also use your faculty for those purposes. So it is my pleasure to come today and to bring with me from the Senate what we call a citation. Looks like this, and it says, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, State Senate, official citation, be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Worcester Polytechnic Institution in recognition of receiving the 2016 Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education from the National Academy of Engineering. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate. It's signed by our President, Stan Rosenberg. It's attested to by myself, by the Clerk of the Senate, William F. Welch. And I am so proud to be able to sign this as the State Senator for this district and to honor you this day. Thank you very much.
Next, I'm very pleased to welcome Gladys Rodriguez-Parker to the podium. Ms. Rodriguez-Parker is the Senior District Representative for U.S. Congressman James P. McGovern, and she brings greetings from our Congressman.
Well, hello, everyone. Buenos dias. Buenas noches. Last but not least, Congressman McGovern could not be here today for this wonderful occasion. Instead, he has sent me, and I have some congressional record remarks that he entered into the record on March 23rd, 2016. I won't read them all, but I will read part of them. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the incredible achievements of Worcester Polytech Institute, the 2016 recipient of the National Academy of Engineering's prestigious Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. WPI is recognized this year by the National Academy for Engineering for the WPI plan, the university's revolutionary project-based approach to education, and for the leadership and contributions of 4 faculty leaders who continue the development and growth of opportunities offered by the WPI plan. And I should probably just stop it there, but no, I can't do that. Because I do have to mention the Gordon Prize, an annual award recognizing new modalities and experiments in education that develop effective engineering leaders, will be presented to WPI on April 15, 2016, for a project-based engineering curriculum developing leadership, innovative problem-solving, interdisciplinary collaboration, and global competencies, and will be shared by Darren Apelian, Alcoa Howmet, Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Director of WPI's Metal Processing Institute, Arthur Heiricher, Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Richard Voss, Dean of Interdisciplinary and Global Studies, and Kristen Wob, Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in congratulating WPI and its outstanding faculty members to be recognized by the National Academy of Engineering and Bernard Gordon is a tremendous honor, and WPI community should be so proud of this incredible achievement. Thank you.
Sure. Dan. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much to both Senator Chandler and Ms. Rodriguez-Parker. We so appreciate it. We're honored. Really honored and humbled by the recognitions you brought today. We strive to be a good partner for our city, our state, our community. And your presence today and these citations really inspire us to continue on that path. So members of the WPI community, Dr. Moat and the National Academy of Engineering, Mr. Gordon and members of the Gordon Foundation, Mr. Russell and our friends from Raytheon, President Pascarella, and especially our celebrants today, Professors Appelian, Deans Heinrich, Orwobi, and Vaz. Thank you so much for your dedication, your efforts, your support, and your leadership. You have truly made today one of the most special days for me at WPI. I'm so very proud to stand here representing this amazing, committed community as we celebrate this prestigious award. And one last thing as I close, will the people in the audience who have been a part of the WPI family since the very beginning of the plan, people who knew Dean Grogan, people who were here when this radical idea was embraced and implemented, and those who have been working to make it happen since then, please stand so that we can celebrate you too. You are a huge part of this tremendous day. Please stand if you have been at WPI working on the plan. We want to celebrate all of you. So now let's party. Let's have a good time. There's a lovely reception right here in the back of the room, chance for you to speak to some of our panelists from today, to congratulate our winners, to enjoy one another's company, and to really reflect on the contributions that have been made that have brought us to this point. Again, thank you all for being here, and enjoy the rest of the day and the reception. Thank you all.